There's a story from the Revolutionary War about a bunch of soldiers who were trying to repair some defensive battlements, and the leader was screaming at him and he's yelling directions, but he wasn't really helping. And this guy rode by in civilian clothes, and he asked the leader, "Hey, why aren't you helping these guys?" And the guy indignantly looked up at him and said, "Sir, I am the corporal." And the guy got off his horse and he apologized, like, "Oh man, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to insult you like that." And he started helping out, and they finally finished. And then this stranger walked back up to the corporal and told him, "Hey, anytime you encounter a problem where you don't have enough soldiers to do the task again, go ahead and ask your general, because I'll hop right off my horse and dive in." And then George Washington got back on his horse and rode away, and the corporal felt like a real idiot. I think in life, when I think about the need around me and the tasks that need to be done, I frequently find myself living and acting and seeing the world through the eyes of the corporal more often than I find myself living and acting and seeing the world through the eyes of George Washington in that story. It's just so easy to get caught up in our own stuff and our own selfishness and our own schedules and our own greatness and our own sense of who we are and what tasks are beneath us, that we don't roll up our sleeves and dive in, even when we know there's need and even when we see there's need. Because the need around us is sometimes really hard to serve. It's really hard to be a part of. It's inconvenient. It takes our money and it takes our time. And sometimes it's dirty and scary and dangerous. And the places that we have to go are hard places to go. And the people that we're supposed to love are hard people to love. And we're constantly told by our culture and our world that if we give, we might not have enough for us, and that those problems are somebody else's problem and somebody else's calling, but not ours, and we're okay because they're beneath us. But then we open up the Bible and look at the life of Jesus, and it gets really uncomfortable really quickly, because the God of the universe didn't seem to think that there were people or tasks that were beneath them, that the people who were hard to love deserved to be somewhere other than where he was, because he didn't want to love them. Instead, he just constantly rolled up his sleeves and he went to the places no one else would go, and he hung out with the people no one else would hang out with, and ultimately he served and he died for a whole bunch of dirty, gross, sinful people who absolutely didn't deserve it, because that's who God is. That's who God is. And he told us, and the Bible tells us, like from beginning to the end, there's this thread. Like from Adam and Eve to revelation of God giving and saying, "This is who I am. This is my character, and you're created in my image. This is who I wired you to be." And there's blessing when you live that way. From beginning to end, God invites us into meaning and purpose. He invites us to live for something that's bigger than ourselves by orienting our lives around the joy of being used by him to make a difference in our world. But it's not always easy to do. It's not. It's a lot easier to get caught up in our own greatness and our own selfishness and our own materialism, to the point that we just don't give, and we make a whole lot of excuses for it. On Sunday, we talked about the Last Supper, how the disciples were sitting around looking at each other, knowing that somebody had to do the gross, dirty task that was beneath them of washing everybody's feet, and none of them wanted to do it because they were concerned with being the greatest, and they were concerned with their own thing and their own ego. And then the greatest of all, Jesus, stood up and wrapped a towel around his waist and washed their feet and said, "You guys, you do the same thing for each other. This is what I made you for." If this thing is going to take off, this church thing in the world, and if you're ever going to live out the meaning and the purpose that you're hardwired for, if you're going to live out the God image in you, if you're going to live like me in the world and be all that you were created to be, you got to pick up a towel. And I wonder in our lives how different it would be if, instead of fighting to be the greatest, or instead of looking out for our own interests, we fought for the towel. We just opened our eyes and looked for the need around us and said, "Look, there. If nothing was below Jesus, nothing is below me. I'm going to pick up the towel." I love that phrase, "fight for the towel." Pat told it to me on Sunday. So she heard a sermon about this same thing, that we should fight for the towel. And I think how often in my life I've fought to avoid the towel, and how different and how much better and more meaningful my life would be if I fought for the towel. If I took a George Washington mindset instead of a I'm the corporal type of a mindset, and it's not always easy. It's not always going to be clean. Like if we do it, if we really want to live fully, if we want to be fully alive, if we want to find meaning and purpose beyond ourself and our stuff, then it's found only in self-sacrifice. And the path to greatness leads only to the bottom. It leads only to fighting for the towel and being George Washington, hopping off our horse and rolling up our sleeves and getting our hands dirty doing tasks that are difficult and that are hard and that are maybe beneath us. And it's not comfortable. I remember a story a few years ago. A group of guys, a few of us, were moving a lady. She was homeless, and she had secured some housing, and all of her stuff was in a storage unit. And it was 11 degrees in Minnesota, and we were moving her entire life, like her all of her property, out of this storage unit into a U-Haul across town into this place that she'd secured. And it wasn't simple. I mean, it was freezing cold, and a lot of the stuff was dirty, and it wasn't easy. And at one point, we were moving a mattress, and it was a really grody mattress. Like everything you could think of when you think grody mattress, stains all over it. And we're trying to move it from the storage unit to the U-Haul, and a couple of the guys holding it slipped, and the mattress almost fell in a big snowy puddle of mush. And one of my buddies, Corey, quick thinking, slid underneath it and propped it up. And the only way to move the mattress without it falling into the snow was basically to push the mattress along Corey's face all the way into the U-Haul. And he stood there underneath it and just propped it up with his head because that's all he had. And we pushed this gross, dirty, smelly, stained mattress across Corey's face so that it wouldn't fall in the mush. And the greatest part of all is that he walked out from under it smiling, and he said, well, if I could do that over again, I would have rather we didn't drop the mattress, but I'm so glad it didn't get wet. And it was just a profound moment to see him smiling there, to realize that, like, that was gross, and as a germaphobe, I would have had to, like, bathe myself in Purell after, but Corey knew that he was living like Jesus in the world, and he found meaning and purpose in it, even though it wasn't clean and it wasn't simple. And for us, like, my warning to you is if we live this out, if we become individuals, we become collectively a body and a church and a community that lives this out, it's not always going to be easy, and it's going to take us to places we maybe wouldn't want to go. And we're going to have to do things we maybe wouldn't want to do, but this is what it looks like to live like Jesus in the world, to fight for the towel, and to orient our lives around self-sacrifice, around the joy of being used by God to make a difference. And even though it isn't simple, it's what we were made in the image of God for, and I promise this. I promise if we're willing to do it, even though it's uncomfortable, God will bring incredible blessing to us, and we'll live fully, and he will use us to rewrite eternity for the people in our world. That's worth living for, and that's worth dying for.